Well, hello, everyone. This is your host, John Jamerson, with another episode of Intellectual Chocolate. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, where we have intelligent conversations with brilliant Black minds. Today, we have Nigel Johnson that's with us, and we'll begin to talk to him. But first, I just want to say Happy New Year's and Happy Kwanzaa to everyone. One of the reasons why I mentioned Kwanzaa is because I really think that the principles of Kwanzaa are very important for us. And so I just want to run down a brief list of what the 7 principles are, which is umoja, which is unity. Unity is important for the success of our community, and success starts with unity. The second one is Kuglia, which is self-determination. With great power comes great responsibility. And so we have to have that self-determination in order to work that out. The next is Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility. It is our collective work and responsibility to build and maintain our communities. The fourth one is Ujamaa, which is collective economics. We got to keep our money in our communities, and we got to understand how to keep that money in within our communities by businesses and working together and creating that generational wealth. The fifth one is Nia, which is our purpose, our responsibility to our ancestors and to our descendants, to those who came before us and those who will come after us. The sixth one is Kuumba, which is creativity. We must use our imagination to be able to develop the communities that we desire to have in the future. And the seventh one is Imani, which is faith. And so we have to believe in our people, we have to believe in our families, in our communities, in our leaders, and most of all, believe in ourselves. And with that being said, if we apply these 7 principles, that I believe that we will make a better community and a better world for us and for all others in the nation. So with that, I would like to introduce Nigel Johnson. Nigel, how are you doing today?
I'm wonderful.
All right. Did you have a great New Year?
Oh, yes. Can't complain. I'm just looking forward to this new year, all the excitement that brings.
Okay.
Everything we'll accomplish together.
Well, Nigel, I have here that you're from Kansas City, Missouri, and that you are a certified affordable housing provider. How's that going for you?
That's going absolutely wonderful. I'm looking, like I said, I'm looking forward to everything that comes with that. We're able to help our people in so many different ways, and I do believe in the concept of each one teach one.
Well, that's great. That is great. I have here that you're into entrepreneurship. And your specialties in the legal and the finance and investing, generational wealth, and real estate. So how did you get into this career path that you're in?
Well, I went to college for business.
Mm-hmm.
And while in college, I during my senior year, I actually received a phone call from my mother that the landlord was selling all of his houses. And he told everyone in the neighborhood except my family. So by the time we found out about it, it was pretty close to the deadline. He was auctioning all the houses. I got that call from my mother, and I was 20 years old, and I told her I was going to find a way to buy it. I didn't have any cash, credit, job, anything in my favor, but I had to find a way to buy a house for her, and I did, and that kind of set me down this path.
Well, that's great. That's great. So myself being a homeowner, man, that had to be pretty scary to jump into, especially in college. Most people in college really don't have any knowledge about credit or anything else. And, that's why the credit predators like to send out the credit cards and everything to your dorm room because they feel that, hey, they don't know anything about it.
That's right.
So by being into that, it got you into owning a home and everything. So how did that affect you as far as learning about credit and things of that nature?
Well, as you mentioned, when I first got to college, I didn't have much of credit. The only credit I had was those two credit cards they gave me when I went to the cafeteria and signed up. They had $500 limits. So I had over $1,000 in credit. In fact, when I bought the house, I had to put $1,000 down at the auction to even be able to bid, and that's where I got the 1,000 from. Was those two credit cards they gave me at the lunchroom. I withdrew all the cash off of them. I didn't know how anything worked. All I knew was I was focused and I was determined and I was going to find a way to make it happen. If that was the only obstacle that was standing in my way, I was going to run through it. And
so with talking about credit,
mm-hmm.
how does that affect you? Because I know that there's a lot of people who are out there who are, as we've talked about, who want to get into owning a home, owning a business, but what is good credit and what's bad credit, and how do we determine what to do with it?
Well, let's just say, ideally, you want to be above a 700.
Okay.
That's usually what I tell people. Aim for above 700, above 750 if you can. The scores range from 350 all the way to 850. The lower the number, the worse. The harder it's going to be to get approved. The higher your interest rates if you are approved, and the more costly it's going to be of an experience for you. That's why you'll see people that have the best of credit. They'll be able to go purchase a brand new home or a brand new car for half the cost of what someone's paying for an older home that might not even cost as much. But so credit does affect everything that we do. How it ties to wealth and everything else is that if that's where you're going to get the financing from, it's a lot easier to go get $100,000 from the bank than it is for you to save your own $100,000 up to go make the exact same investment. Right?
So that's good credit when you go get something that such as a home and things of that nature. So tell us what are some of the bad credits that you see, especially with our people that we go and get credit for and credit on?
We tend to, the problem ends up being that it's not always what you do, sometimes it's how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I had an investor friend of mine, I coach investors on how to, buy properties and invest in businesses and so forth and so on. And one person that I met with, he went and he ended up having $100,000 in personal credit cards.
Mm-hmm.
And to invest in property. So he withdrew all the cash off of those, similar to my own story where I maxed out and I didn't know any better when I was in college. Well, this guy, fast forward all these years later, he did the same thing. And he went from an 800 credit score to who knows, maybe a 5 or in the 4s or something like that because he maxed out all his personal credit cards. And I don't teach people to do it that way. I teach people to, yes, you use your personal credit, you build that up as high as possible. Then you use that to essentially establish corporate credit, or what I call business credit. And you use that business credit to do your investing because you're encouraged to use that.
Right.
You stay in good standing with that, as long as you keep your payments up and so forth and so on, then that's not going to have a damaging effect on your personal score as long as you stay in good standing on those accounts.
So when you say business credit and you give in reference to investing, then that means that you're getting credit on things that is going to, in a sense, generate income. Am I correct?
Absolutely that. But beyond that, when we're talking about corporate credit or business credit, we're talking about establishing a whole separate entity. Okay. So I liken it to giving birth to a child. Okay. When you give birth to a child, that's a whole nother legal person from you. Of course, I'm not a lawyer, so of course all those disclaimers apply. But the concept is this: you're one person. Right. When you have a child or you create a business, if you do things the right way, that's an entirely separate person from you. And when you have a whole nother person, that person has their own social security number or employee ID number. It has its own credit history. It has all these things where it can transact, conduct business, sign contracts, and do all those things that any other person can do. So once you have a business that matures, just like you have a child that can grow up to a particular level, and then they're mature and they're able to make their own decisions, where your business can do that same kind of development as well. Okay, so you want to establish a business, build it up, nurture it in such a way that it can stand on its own and be able to make its own decisions and make its own investments going forward that'll benefit you as well.
So you are your own an entrepreneur on your own. How did you get out of corporate America? What prompted all that?
There were quite a few things that happened. It was many times in life where I just kept getting that wake up call, my quote unquote wake up call.
Yeah.
We all when we're in an environment where they prefer us not to be there. But I was fortunate in that I had of course the academic backgrounds and things where they felt obligated to give me that opportunity. But of course that didn't make it any easier when I got there.
Right.
One particular example, I was working at, without naming a particular name, I was working at one of the national tax preparation organizations, and I had achieved a higher level of, achievement in that organization, in which I was privy to the bonus payout structure. Over 500 employees working at this particular location, and the bonuses were calculated for these employees in such a way where they were all getting underpaid. And I found this flaw. This is a publicly traded company. I found a flaw where each employee was essentially getting cheated out of about $2,000 in bonuses per year. So do the math. 500 employees, 2,000 apiece. That's over $1 million a year that these employees were getting cheated out of. And I found this flaw. At the time, I was taking a human resources management class. So these things were really, fresh on my mind and all of that. So I came back and I applied that in the real world. And while in my face, they were pretty happy that I found this error. And we all talked about how that was going to maintain employee retention and keep the employees happy and satisfaction and so forth. Behind closed doors, they weren't too happy at all that I found out about that error. And many years later, I came to find out that there probably was no accident. Okay. These that do math for a living. Okay. So I'm pretty sure, looking back at it with my older eyes, I realized that was no accident. They were intentionally underpaying the people. And, by me blowing the whistle on that, that led to why I wasn't invited back the following tax season.
Yeah. Okay? Yeah. So
that was one major wake up call for me that I needed to apply my talent somewhere where it would be appreciated and beneficial to our people.
Yeah. I share a very similar story where I was at a Fortune 500 company. We had over 1,000 employees there, and I went and stood up for the employees, and in the process of doing that, in my department, we were #1 in the nation for 7 years in a row. Every month, we were #1 in the nation, and their response to me was they loved the work that I did, but because I stood up for our people and I didn't allow some of the things that they were trying to do to them take place with my backing. I mean, it still took place, but because I backed them up, it hindered that. But it didn't take long for them to all of a sudden want to direct me outside of the workplace. And so they did such a thing. So I understand. And it was at that time when I was like, if this is what corporate America is about, then, I really don't want to be a part of it. And I've had a great distaste for corporate America since. I was hell-bent, so to speak, at that point in time on being my own boss. I'd grown up wanting to be an entrepreneur through the lessons of my father and everything, and have worked since I was 6, 7 years old on doing things that were bringing income. And so I definitely understand that. In one of the interviews that I was checking out on you, you were talking about generational wealth, and you were talking about how during the time of retirement, how that there was a great discrepancy between a certain group and another group. And so I'd like for you to elaborate on that, if you would.
Okay. Okay. Well, once I finished grad school, I got my master's degree. It was quite a few insurance companies that came trying to recruit me. Okay? And much like yourself, I'm born and bred to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Okay? So the insurance companies, it intrigued me because it allowed me to somewhat still be an entrepreneur while I still had the benefits that came with the other area. So one particular insurance company that I worked for, they had trainings every Wednesday. and they invited out the Social Security Administration to come speak with us the Wednesday. So they had the representative that came out, and of course they bring out their statistics, their facts and figures. And while I understand that you can create statistics to prove anything,
right,
whatever point that you want to make, you know, when you dig into the numbers, sometimes you can find a lot of truth in them. Sometimes it's an ugly truth. Okay. What this guy talked about this day was the difference between Europeans and African Americans, okay, at the time of retirement. And in the study that he brought up, or excuse me, the figures he brought up stated that at retirement age, what was the net worth of the average person in each of those particular groups, okay? And they said that the average net worth of the European person was $250,000 at retirement, okay? And they contrasted that with the average net worth of the average Black person, in which they stated that that was $5,000 at the age of retirement, okay? 250 compared to $5,000. And when I heard those numbers, it blew me away. It really just, it shattered my whole outlook on everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, naturally with me having the, you know, business statistics training and all the other things, I knew to look into these numbers to find out what they actually meant. And once I dug into that $250,000 number, I realized that 90% of that was in their home equity, okay? And then when we looked at the $5,000 number, for our people and peeled back the layers of that onion, we found out that 90% of our people are renting. So, I mean, do the math. I mean,
right.
We're over here and we have no equity. They're renting over here, and that's why their net worth is, you know, 50 times bigger than ours at the same age of retirement. So while we have to overcome all the other obstacles that we have to deal with, that's one big one that we can't lose at that. That's one we can't afford to lose at.
Yeah, that is devastating. When I heard those statistics, it was like, wow, you know, that's a great discrepancy there. You know, $250,000 versus $5,000. You know, we know that in today's world, just to bury someone, to have a funeral, you're going to spend 10 plus thousand on an average. So if your net wealth is only $5,000, you don't even have enough to be buried, you know, without putting your family even further in the hole. And so I just thought it was very important to pull that out, because it explains the importance of home ownership and the importance of your business. And speaking of that, just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor today, and thank everybody for tuning in. I'm here with Nigel Johnson, and we ask you guys if you would please go visit theblackbusinessschool.com for financial literacy and learn how to grow your business. We're here with Nigel Johnson. We've been talking about generational wealth and the benefits of good credit. And so, Nigel, if you would give people a way to be able to contact them, give them your name, your business name, and where they might be able to reach out to you.
Okay. Again, my name is Nigel Johnson. I am the founder of the Nigel E. Johnson Family Charitable Foundation. The website address is nigeljohnson.org. That's NIGELJOHNSON.org. You can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/AskNigelJohnson. That's AskNigelJohnson. And if you want to learn more about the affordable housing programs and how we do that and what we teach people, you can go to affordablehousingprograms.com.
All right. So, speaking of the importance of credit and this great discrepancy in generational wealth at the age of retirement, what are some of the good ways to combine those together into getting financing? You know, what should our people begin to want to do, and how to work together to be able to get into real estate if they want to get out of the renting scene into home ownership? What would be some of the things that you would have them to do?
Okay. Well, some of the initial things that I suggest people to do, everyone to do,
Mm-hmm.
is, everyone should own a home-based business, not just any kind of business. You can have an outside business if you want to, but everyone must have a home-based business. Why? Because at the end of the day, you're still going to pay your rent or mortgage, going to pay lights, gas, water, utilities, internet, cell phone bill. You're paying all these things anyway. Okay. So even if you can't write off all of those, if you prorate write some portion thereof as business expenses, then that's essentially putting money right back in your pocket that you're spending anyway. Okay. So the first question people have, or the first statement people often make when you tell them that they need to have a business or they need to start investing or need to purchase a home is, I don't have the money. Well, you already have the money. You have the money. You have the spending power. The problem is we're misallocating. We're using it the wrong kind of way. We're spending the money, we're paying the expense, and then we're paying for it again come April when it's tax time because we're not getting the benefit that's supposed to come back to us. Okay. So we must all start by having a home-based business. We must work in a collective sense where the people that we have in our circle are all helping us to achieve, the same types of goals. We have to work towards home ownership. Yes, in my book, I talk about the traditional ways that I purchased a home, using credit and going to the bank, getting a traditional mortgage and so forth and so on. But that's not the only way. There are alternative means of buying a property, okay? Those ways don't necessarily require us to use the bank. We have ways that we can buy properties with or without the help of the bank. Sure, the bank has cheaper money, the interest rates are lower, the payments are lower, and so forth and so on. However, there are ways that we can purchase a property without the credit necessarily being a hindrance that it has been in years past. Okay, and the biggest thing that we can do once we start owning homes in our own neighborhoods is that we rent those homes to the people in our own neighborhoods, help them to own homes and sell the homes to them as well. That way we can all benefit. So that way all these dollars, our biggest expense is our housing expense.
True.
So the biggest percentage of our income is being shipped outside of our community to people that don't like us, don't look like us, don't care about us. Then how can we improve? How can we get better? How can we increase that 5,000 average number for us? No, we have to those dollars circulate amongst us, and that touches back on those principles that you spoke on for Kwanzaa.
Yeah. And me being in the farming business, man, I see all the benefits that come from that home ownership, from owning land. And, one of the things that caught me off guard was earlier this year, I received a book from a lady from the Smithsonian Museum. And she had done a documentary on African-American communities pre-colonialism of America. Mm-hmm. And what she was showing was during that time, in order to be able to vote, you had to own 20 acres of land. And in order to be in a government official, to be elected to an office, you had to own 200 acres of land. And so the importance of having a voice and the importance to be able to go out there and give direction into what happens in your community all stem from land ownership. And so when you're saying the average one of our people is renting, it's just mind-boggling as to why we're in it's not mind-boggling why we're in the position that we're in, why our communities are in the positions we're in. We don't own anything, so we don't have any say-so about what goes on. And so if you want to be able to control your communities, if you want to be able to have a say-so as to who comes in and polices your community, if you want to have a say-so as to the businesses that come in to your community and what they're doing, then you have to own that community. We ain't talking about the brothers who claim they own the block, who are renting on that block. You don't own nothing, you're renting. And that's why you on the street corner, because that the ground that you standing on is the only ground that you have entitlement to at that moment. And we have to move beyond that. So I think that what you're doing is great. one question I want to ask you, as I was sharing earlier, I've been dealing with my grandmother who is now, she's 96. So Grandma, I hope you don't hear this because I know you'll jump me for giving that info out. But I'm glad that she's still around. We just moved her into assisted living this year. And one of the things that we had to deal with was the fact that she owned property and owned homes and stuff, and how those people come in and try to swoop in on what you own. Is there anything that you could help to enlighten our people on how they can use these entity, this business, home business entity, to protect that generational wealth from these types of predators that come in and swoop in and swipe what little bit we do have?
Oh, yes. Actually, my grandmother, growing up, she had property. Okay. She learned from her parents and their parents and so forth and so on. When my grandmother was getting up there in years, she's passed on now. But prior to her passing, when she started getting a little sickly, I was just coming into the business. So this was about 20 years ago. Okay. And I started getting into, again, the insurance and, the taxes and all the other stuff. And I started doing this advanced learning as it relates to real estate. And I began learning about trust. Okay. And, trust law is old law.
Right.
Okay? Predates the country, So I came to her and I expressed to her, I said, Grandma, I don't know if you have a will. I don't know if you have a trust. I don't know if you have any of these things. And of course, she comes from that generation where it was none of my business. Okay.
Right.
So, grown folks conversation. She used to change my dirty diapers and I didn't need to be talking to her about that type of stuff. I'm sure you all heard that type of thing. And it's, it's unfortunate, but, we have to have these kind of conversations with our people, because when she passed, she, at the time of her passing, she only had 4 properties and they all ended up having to go through probate. Okay. We couldn't find her will, she didn't, when I was trying to talk to her about the trust, she didn't look into that, didn't set those things up. So it was a nightmare. House is sat empty for 9-10 years, vandalism, things getting destroyed, investors coming in, trying to swoop in and take them. Just a complete nightmare. Okay. But it took a lot of fortitude. It took a lot of, while I'm dealing with the emotional, because, she passed and then a year later, my father passed. So, so her son, my father passed, and, I'm dealing with the emotional from both of those, but at the same time, I'm trying to handle the business side of things. So, my advice is, while we're setting these things up, we're thinking about our legacy. We're thinking about our children. We're thinking about our grandchildren. We're thinking about our great-grandchildren. When we're long gone, we have to have these things established while we're still here.
Right.
It's 10 times easier. What they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yes.
We set these things up and we could avoid probate, with the right documents and things in place. Transfer on debts and PODs and so forth and so on, certain types of accounts. But trusts are real big. That's the biggest thing that I'm seeing. When I was at the, financial services agency, the insurance company for all those years, they wanted me to target clients who had a minimum income of $250,000 a year, minimum net worth of $500,000, which none of those people look like us. Okay, that's what they wanted me to go after.
Yeah.
But while they were teaching me how to handle those types of clients, I was learning all the knowledge that we lacked.
Right.
So I can share these things with our people. Okay, but at some point we have to implement. Learning is one thing, but we have to execute and implement these things. Okay. So we have to set up, we do have to have a will. We do have to have trust in place. We do have to have these financial documents. We got to have these conversations with our people. My grandmother impressed me so much. We're talking about legacies and things. My grandmother was one of 17 children. Her parents, they had a couple hundred acres down in Oklahoma.
Right.
And my research, I'm thinking that they got it through the Dawes Rolls. I'm doing all the research on that, wondering, is that how they came up on all this land back then when they had to go up against all those odds? And, did the research, and while some of my other family members got land that way, these particular ones, they actually bought it, with cash and things. And they've established or set this land up in such a way where it was able to pass down to the other, children, grandchildren, and it's there for, for our benefit and the generation to come beyond us. So we have to be careful. I mean, I'm very impressed that you're into farming. I believe that's something that we all need to get into. We have to get control of large masses of land,
Yeah.
like we used to. Because
Right.
if we try to rush out to the cities, and it's fine if you want to own a home in the city, but we have to have some real land. We have to have some land for our families, like our ancestors.
Right.
Ours that we can build on, that we can do whatever we need to on, so that we can have something to pass down. Because if we leave our land, then you know who's going to swoop in behind us and come take it. I mean, that's what's
right.
going to happen.
And that's what they've done. Our families own land, and we left that land to go and rent somewhere else, and then we can't understand why we're in the predicament that we're in today. I'm fortunate that on my grandmother's side we have land in Mississippi. Where I'm at now in a town in Indiana called Lyles Station, Lyles Station. Lyles Station is documented at the Smithsonian African American Museum. My father-in-law was being honored there when they first opened up for farming. Being the only farmer who's still farming land that his family owned pre-Civil War. And the only way that took place was due to what you're talking about right here, a trust. The reason why Lyles Station is the last remaining African-American settlement in Indiana is due to the simple fact that they created trust back then, and a lot of the families still own the land. And for those who are out there who have family land that you don't know what to do, check me out. I'm name of my business is Legacy Taste of the Garden. You've been speaking about legacy. That's the name of my business, is Legacy Taste of the Garden. I'm on Facebook. You can hit me at legacytasteofthegarden.com. If you have land and you don't know what to do with it, hit me up. I will help direct you on how to set that up and use that for generational wealth. So be sure to hit me up on that. I always ask in my interviews what I call my legacy question of the day. And I give my spiel about our business and our background. And legacy to me is, as you were saying, setting up something for 100, 200, 300 years from now. And so my legacy question to you is, in 200 to 300 years from now, what would you want your family to say about you?
What I would want my family to say to me is this, or about me is this: Nigel is the one who set the stage for everyone that came after him to start where he finished instead of starting where he began. I believe that's the key difference right there.
That is it. That is it. I am thoroughly impressed with you. And for those who've been listening, I hope that you've been hitting some likes. I hope that you share this. Once again, I want to give a shout out to theblackbusinessschool.com. Please go there if you have anything that you need for financial literacy and to learn how to grow your business. They are the ones that help you. They're the ones who've helped me. I'm not only a member, I am. What you're seeing is the result of the product. So me being where I'm at today is due to them. So I give my shout outs to them. Is there anything else that you would like to shout? How can people where are you located? And I know that you're in more than just Kansas City now. So where are some of the places that people can look to get personal contact with you, and how can they also get in contact with you online things?
Well, yes, we do operate in various markets across the country. We're here, St. Louis, Kansas City, Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri, as well as Chicago, expanding operations to Detroit, Michigan, Atlanta, Georgia, and a few other markets that we're entering by the end of the year. So I do travel extensively throughout the country, throughout the year. You can reach out to me and get in contact with me through Facebook. That's facebook.com/AskNigelJohnson. You can also go directly to my nonprofit website, which is nigeljohnson.org. And other than that, like I said, I'm here.
All right. Any special shout outs or anything that you would like to give?
I just want to shout out to Dr. Boyce. I love everything that you're doing. Like I said, you constantly inspire me. And everybody else, man, keep doing what you're doing. I'm here. I want to play a big part in everyone's success.
All right. Well, that is great. As in my honor that I normally do, I tip my hat off to you, sir, in the efforts that you're doing and in the purpose that you have and how you're going about doing that. I'd like to say thank you to you and to everyone who's been watching and joining us here on the Intellectual Chocolate. If you know of someone who has something interesting to say, please have them to go to intellectualchocolate.com, and we will be more than happy to have them on here. Once again, Happy New Year's to everyone. And with that, we will sign off.